Clarice Lispector. 2. The non-style of the internal world. Clarice Lispector was a Brazilian writer born in Ukraine, in a Jewish family. She is one of the most important short story writers in the 20th century in her country and in Portuguese language. This is the second part of a work that studies her biography, works, stories and style, a literary analysis of one of her most representative short stories, Clandestine Happiness. By Fernando Chelle. A woman's look and maybe a woman's writing style too. Clarice Lispector impregnated the world with her smart woman's view, able to perceive the most minimal sensations and knowing that nothing is irrelevant, no matter how small or trivial it is. The daily life world, the world of those things that have no story, it has been the woman's world for a long time, but it can provide us with innumerable surprises. It only takes a deep look and understanding of the signs of an underlying reality. Elena Loce de Sola. The purpose of this article is to continue the previous one on Vade Nuevo, about Brazilian-Ukrainian-born writer Clarice Lispector, Chelle, Ukraine, December 10, 1920, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, December 9, 1977. I will make a literary analysis on her short story Clandestine Happiness, the initial short story of a homonymous book published in Rio de Janeiro in 1971. The main plot of the story is about evil, moral suffering and humiliation inflicted to a little girl by her classmate. The antagonist of the story is a fat, short, freckled and big-breasted girl who, driven by jealousy of the other schoolgirls, begins a sort of sadistic and evil vengeance on a girl. This plot runs around the possession of a book that the protagonist really wants. The protagonist affords the humiliation, but thanks to her perseverance and the mediation of the evil girl's mother, ends up succeeding and taking possession of the wished book. The short story has a classic structure, beginning, middle, and end. In the first moment, the narration introduces the two main characters of the story, in the first place, the antagonist girl and then the protagonist girl, who is also the narrator. This first moment also shows the second moment's point of interest, book loans and sadism towards the protagonist, who wants to read a particular book. The second moment, the longest one in the narration, focuses on what she calls the Chinese torture, referring to the protagonist's persistence in having the book borrowed, a book named Adventures of Little Nose by Monteiro Lobato. The plot is solved when the mom of the girl who owns the book shows up in the scene. The final moment of the story focuses in the experiences of the protagonist after she could finally get the book. A look into the plot and some commentaries. There are a lot of autobiographic elements in this story. Even if the fiction is as free as the writers want, there is no doubt that the blonde, skinny, and tall girl is Clarice Lispector herself when she lived in Recife. This short story shows childhood as a stage of exploration and discovery, a preparation for life. On the one hand, it is about the protagonist's hope of getting the book, and on the other hand, the jealous antagonist girl, who humiliates and torments her classmate just for considering her more beautiful. The jealousy and evil of this antagonist drives her to begin some sort of vengeance towards the protagonist, who is a representative of those stylized pretty girls so different to the antagonist herself. She was fat, short, freckled and with sort of reddish excessively frizzy hair. She had an enormous bust, while all of us were still flat-chested, but what a talent she had for cruelty. She was pure vengeance, noisily chewing her caramels. How this girl must have hated us, we who were unforgivably pretty, thin, tall, with smooth hair. The antagonist, daughter of the bookstore owner, has the advantage of having a book that the protagonist wants, Adventure of Little Nose by Monteiro Lobato, a classic Brazilian's child book. The antagonist promises the narrator that she will lend her the aforementioned book, but she uses this power to mercilessly humiliate and inflict moral pain in the narrator. The antagonist starts telling the narrator that she must head to the antagonist's home to get the book borrowed, but days pass and the antagonist always has an excuse for not lending the book, and the same thing happens every day. The evil of the bookstore owner's daughter can be seen in the pleasure she feels by humiliating and tormenting the other girl. The secret plan of the bookstore owner's daughter was quiet and diabolic, and so it continued. For how long? I went to her house every day, without missing a single day. We can see how the protagonist, even though she is aware of the torture she is being inflicted, keeps going to the antagonist's house with joy, with the hope of finally receiving the book. The love for reading makes her afford the humiliation, but in the end, the circumstances turn in favor and she ends up being benefited. One day, the mother of the antagonist girl, who has repeatedly seen the other girl in her house's door, and after she asks for explanations, becomes aware of the evil game that her own daughter was playing. As a punishment, the mother gives the book to the protagonist, and tells her that she can keep it all the time she wants. For as long as I would like, is all that a person, big or small, can dare to want. This is something wonderful for the blackmail victim. It means that there are no restrictions and boundaries of any kind. Nevertheless, despite we thought the girl was going to start reading immediately, she decided to postpone the reading and just enjoy the possession of the book as a mere object. She prefers to enjoy the emotion of a slow reading, because she will have the book for as long as she likes. The story ends before the protagonist reads the book entirely. Reading becomes to her a clandestine happiness. On the other hand, this short story, which shows childhood as a stage of exploration and discovery of life, it ends with a paragraph that sort of shows the end of the childhood, the protagonist's transit to sexual maturity. From time to time I sat in the hammock, swaying with the book open on my lap, without touching it, in the purest state of ecstasy. I was no longer a girl with a book, I was a woman with her lover.